Welcome. This is the podcast series dedicated to living a revenue culture. Those of you who've been with us for a while, you already know that a revenue culture is achieved when you maximize profit because you first optimized your people in a low friction revenue context. When you think about that, it's obvious you're never going to maximize profit if your people aren't fulfilled and happy and creative and innovative and collaborative and all those good things. But the thing we often forget is when we're optimizing our people, we need to optimize them for what we want them to deliver for us, which hopefully is profitable revenue. And we can deliver profitable revenue by being the best programming organization in the world or the best engineers in the world, but we're the best engineers who deliver value to people who are glad to pay us for it. So that's what we're here to talk about. We bring you people from the industry who are experts or certainly practicing really hard to become experts in delivering that revenue culture to their community and to the rest of us. Today, we have a friend of mine who I've had a chance now to work with a couple of years, Chad Knauer. And you're going to have this is going to be very interesting. I feel like he and I are brothers from another mother. There's so many things that we think of and act on in a similar way. And he has a distinguished career in the aerospace world. And he was very leadership technical, and I'll let him talk about it. But both sides of it. He wasn't just somebody who did engineering or just did leadership. He really managed important projects. And so now he's got a new organization that he's going to talk about. And that organization is going to be connected with the professional revenue community. And so we're going to see some really incredible opportunities to do maybe work that hasn't been available to people before. So welcome, Chad.
Well, thank you so much, Rick. I want to thank you for providing the opportunity to share with your audience. And then, as you had mentioned, the brother from another mother, I feel exactly the same way. So I appreciate looking forward to exploring how the revenue game and Axom integrated solutions not only aligns, but that we bring complementary elements to a better together model.
Yeah. And we both believe culture is so important. And,
Absolutely.
that I'm sure is going to come out in today's conversation. For, for
Certainly.
for the audience, one of the things we're doing different this year is that we're trying to blend the fact that if it's not obvious, I'm from the boomer generation, with Josh coming from the Gen Z generation. So Josh and I do these things together. And so with that, Josh, what question? You and I were talking about what we wanted to ask Chad. What do you
Yes.
want to start?
Yeah, so Chad, of course, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Josh.
For people who are meeting you for the first time, how did you go from aerospace engineering and Honeywell to building Axom integrated solutions?
So it's an interesting story. Um, at in 2021, so I moved out here in the valley from the Midwest. I'm originally from Indiana, and worked in various industries back in the Midwest, and then Allied Signal came a calling, which ultimately is Honeywell. They acquired Honeywell and retained the name, and they're like, "Hey, are you tired of wrapping your pipes in the wintertime and shoveling snow and those kind of things? And hey, come on out to sunny Phoenix and work on gas turbines and really cool aerospace products." And so it was a tempting offer that I could not pass up. And so I came out here and worked at Honeywell for 25 plus years. And then as I send my managers through every year, I do a career bucket list, and I did the same thing for myself. And I had achieved everything on my bucket list. I was at the bottom of it, with the exception of one role that didn't really exist in the world. And so I was in the blessed position to be able to retire from the corporate life. And but I had no plan. I didn't have a true legitimate plan. And I did that on purpose. I wanted to explore, do some volunteer work, other things. But then, within the first 6 months of being uh, looking around, I attempted to wander in the desert, literally and figuratively. I like the four wheel, so I do go out to the desert, and it helps me think. And I ultimately sent myself through the same exercise I send my managers through, and it's a Venn diagram, real simple, of what is your vision, or what's your passion, sorry,
Yeah.
and then what are your core strengths, and then how do you add value in the world. And so the intersection of those three is what you should be doing for the next chapter in your life. And I did it the first time, and it would be what you would expect from a corporate America type answer, and I threw it away. And then I did some soul searching and said, okay, let's do it for real this time. And I did. And ultimately, what popped out was Axom Integrated Solutions. And the core element to Axom is ultimately we are a consulting firm, but I don't like the term consulting necessarily, because it can have a negative connotation with it, if you will. And so what we do is focus on the root problems, the true problems that are facing businesses. We meet them where they are, which ultimately means what are the challenges that are facing them today, and what are the big picture challenges that they have no idea how to solve. That's our ideal sweet spot. Is if it's big, hairy, ugly, crazy, complex, chaotic, which is a word that you and I share, Rick, problem or challenge space. How do we address that? And then we give them solution sets to co-create with them. It's not us riding in with like knights in shining armor,
Yeah.
but we co-create solutions with the client to systemically and sustainably address their challenges. So as an example, we will, if they come back to us after our engagement 6 to 12 months later and say, "Hey, I want you to solve the identical problem again, and we'll pay you for it," we failed.
Yeah.
We have failed as Axom Integrated Solutions. You know, if we set them up and teach them to fish, as opposed to we sell them fish, teaching them to fish is our end game.
It's a beautiful story and quite the journey.
Yes.
So throughout that journey,
Yes,
what
sir.
what was it that made you realize that many business problems are not actually the problem, but symptoms of something deeper?
It actually started from probably college, and maybe even before college and early childhood. I've always been a curious kid, and taking apart devices to figure out how they work. It's probably why I became an engineer. Um, and understanding the why ultimately, what is driving this, and that comes back to the root cause element, but always asking why. It's not the symptom. Okay, well, my head hurts. Okay, why is that? Tell me a little bit more, right? And you continue to progressively evolve into what is the true disease, if you will, to use the medical analogy, as opposed to the symptom. And so it's the way I used to problem solve when I was a kid, when you're fixing your car, whatever. And then it's formalized through college, with an aerospace degree, and then it's put into action and practice working in aerospace for 25 to 30 years as well. So the analogy is stuffing an airplane and integrating an airplane is very akin to a business and a business ecosystem.
And You talk about aerospace. In aerospace, everything's connected. If one part of the system fails, the whole mission can be affected. How does that same thinking apply to business growth?
The same thing certainly applies to business growth in the sense that if you're not taking care of your back office and the aftermarket or support, fielded support, you're going to have a very, very hard time to sell new business or to deliver new business to your ideal buyers, if you will. So the front end and the back end are unbelievably connected. And then you have the development phase, the research and development phase, in the middle of that. So you got the front end with new business, you got the back end with sustained sales and customer support, but that R&D as well is critical for customer sat, right? So selling new business means you have to operate efficiently, effectively, and communicating with your customers to deliver the right products during R&D phase, right? And it's not just a win for the client, for the customer, but it's a win for the company as well. So one of the key things is looking at stakeholder value. So not just focused on narrowly the myopic view of the OEM value, but think about who's the end customer, right? The end customer is, it could be all three of us flying on an airplane, or it could be in a biz jet, or it could be we're serving our war fighters and they're in a fighter jet, or the theater of operations where they're operating as well. So think of a bigger picture view of who those key stakeholders truly are.
Yeah, Chad, when you tell that, it it constantly reminds me of so many leaders should be leading the organization are so short-term focused
Yes.
that whether it's Wall Street, what's this month or this week or this day, or they look at the problem is giving me the headache. I can't get rid of the headache, and as soon as it's gone, I'm going to forget it.
Hmm.
Uh, how do in the type of client you work with, how do you help them see that bigger picture?
So it's funny you should mention that. What I've found, especially focusing on the small and medium-sized businesses, and when I say small and medium, you kind of have to caveat what that means. So we'll certainly go down into the high eight-figure, low eight-figure range, but we'll also go up to just under $1 billion in annual rev for a business. And the thing is regardless of at what scale, there's always that challenge of getting, whether it's you're working with the CEO or others in the C-suite, to pull them out of the tactical. And as you get into the smaller end of that, it tends to be a little higher on the tactical, but there's 4 levels in the system that we use. And so it's tactical, and then you can get into a projectized or more of a portfolio level view, and then it's strategic, and then beyond strategic is the visionary level. And so the metaphor I use is you're going from the pine needles to the tree to the forest to the curvature of the earth. And so
Ooh, I love
no
that.
one is at curvature of the earth when we first meet them, if you will. They think about it and it's included in their uh, a 20-minute discussion for their strategic plan, and they're like, hey, let's look at our vision. And then they go into a little bit of strategy, but what they call strategy is really actually more annual operating planning.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And it's
Sure.
interesting. You have very intentional language around it, which I'm sure you use with your client, which
Yes.
I'm sure helps them get a new position.
Yes. No, exactly. And to that point, that's one of the things that the revenue science and the model that you've developed is very similar to what we do in Axom Integrated Solutions, is establish that common language, because as you interact and work with the clients, they have their own culture, they have their own, set lexicon,
Yep.
of their own language. And so if you come in and say, hey, we want to help collaborate with you to transform and make the company great, right? Well, great needs a quantification with that,
Yeah.
because what I think is great
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
be different than what the client thinks is great. And so that's why we spend a lot of time on where are they? That's one of our core questions. Where are they as an ecosystem, and understanding that in rich detail? And then where are they going? And we help them dream of the possibilities, because back to that curvature of the earth view,
Yeah.
a lot of companies will stay within the box, if you will, right?
Yep.
They're not thinking about the true possibilities of where they and their enterprise can go. And so we help them dream of those possibilities.
Well, that fits your teaching them to fish versus giving them fish. A
Yep,
lot of people would say, "Oh, somebody gave me enough fish, life's good," uh, but that's not where it should end.
correct. Yeah, it's a bit of a tactical, because then you have a supply, right?
Yep.
You're now contingent upon revenue game or Axom supplying the fish to the client, as opposed to giving them the opportunity to make their own make buy solution
Yep.
decision on what's my fish supplier. Maybe fishing is my core competency, and I don't want to be directly connected to the revenue stream and ask them for delivering fish. But boy, they're really really good at teaching us to fish and making us fish at a semi-professional or professional level. So let's hire them to help us solve that challenge. Sure.
When you hear Rick talk about revenue science, zero thinking, and aligning marketing, sales, operations, leadership, where do you see the strongest connection to your work at AIS?
So a couple different areas. So I think where we align is getting to the science and utilizing systems thinking to shape our practices and shape the industries that we serve. And so, growing up, like I said, with an affinity towards science and STEM and those type of things, and then getting the degree I did as Rick has, with his the financial and the deep business and technical backgrounds as well. We both espouse to let's act on fact,
Yep.
and let's let the data set us free, if you will. So we don't act on emotion. It's not that type of challenge, but you really look objectively at a problem set, and let's go diagnose first before we solve a challenge. And that comes back to our root cause, solving the true problem and understanding the true problem up front, so that we can systemically solve it later. And critical thinking, has framed uh, the way that we think at Axom. And then several, I'm a bit of a book nerd, a business book nerd in particular, but all kinds of books. And some of my favorites that have shaped the way I think are all the Drucker materials, Deming, Blue Ocean Strategy, Good to Great, and one that's a little more recent, meaning within the last 10 years, but is phenomenal, is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. So I have a high respect for the military, and I've uh, been a civilian contractor for the military to help serve our war fighters. And his his model and the approaches that he utilizes, it's almost like he was developing that in the Navy SEALs when I was developing that through my career, in aerospace, of the golden rules to use and to apply, and that have further evolved, through Axom integrated solutions. But that's that's a key focus area for us. And it's extreme ownership is a key element of Jocko's, and accountability and holding each other accountable. And so when we interact with our clients, we see that as they're our accountability partners. So we have declarations of expectations with them, and we adhere to those, and we expect them to adhere to those as well.
Yeah, I love the extreme ownership. Is that the correct term?
That's the name of the book. Yes.
And when you engage with clients, do you hold them accountable for extreme ownership? And
Yes.
if you do, share how that works, because having worked with clients for many decades,
Hmm.
often sellers are afraid to acknowledge what the buyer's responsible to do to get the outcome. And that
So,
always has kind of mystified me, but
sure.
share what you guys have used and learned, and that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, certainly. So like I had mentioned, in the contract, in our general consulting agreements, we put our declaration of expectations up front. So it's in contract. This is what we expect of ourselves, and this is what they themselves expect. So there's signature associated with that. In addition, we walk through the statement of work, and we identify what is the consultant's responsibilities. If we have subcontractors, what are their responsibilities, and then what is the client's responsibility as well. So when we get into the engagement, there's no fuzz about who does what to who, and oh, well, you can't have access to that material or this data or other things. It's explicitly spelled out in the SAL and in the GCA.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
um, have you, my observation when you do what you just described,
Hmm.
the outcomes are, we talk about cost of chaos and we talk about a lot of things, but
Yep.
you're removing the chaos before it has a chance to get in.
Exactly. Exactly. Because at the end of the day, I want to negotiate on those points ahead of time. I don't want to discover that 6 months into the engagement, and so you're setting expectations in both directions. And in fact, it will help to tease out those clients that don't adhere to those, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, no, if I've got some hard line points, relative to behaviors and values and things, and they're like, no, I want to strike these things, then that gives me pause on whether they're the right client for us.
Yeah. One of the things that has bothered me for as long as I can remember are
Hmm.
people who intentionally set out to write a sloppy contract and then manage their profits by engineering change. I mean, to me, that's just
Sure.
dishonest. And
No, absolutely.
and if I'm
Absolutely.
a buyer and I walk into that situation, I'm not sure I deserve it, but I sure have a responsibility for the fact that I walked myself into a scenario where somebody can get 10, 20 extra points by, oh, well, we didn't define that before, so here it is now.
Right. No, and that's where you kind of like the four levels that I talked about in a system. Management of a contract and adherence to a contract also can be managed in those type of 3 to 4 levels, given you build in enough framework so that you can have change management,
Yeah.
right? But you also have a solid definition of what that rev dash baseline is, and then go from there. Now, if there is some fuzziness around it or some grayness, then build that in and recognize this is grayness and state it accordingly, but then put an action that says we're going to close this grayness by a cardinal data freeze or a cardinal point.
Yep. 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 Very cool. Thank you. I love that. It makes
Absolutely.
such a difference. And and we don't talk about trust. If you want to be trusted, you got to define those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And even to get a customer to say yes, the trust has to be established up front, right? And so we've got a bit of a trust gap model, if you will, that we walk our clients through to teach them how to close the trust gap with their clients and marketing space. So there's three questions that we need to answer as a part of that. And one is it substantiated, right? So that's the prove it part of the model. And that comes in multiple forms, use cases and making it real for them. And we do reverse business cases and establish an ROI using their data, not something we make up. And then is it valuable, right? So that ties back to the ROI as well. And then is it differentiated? And so they have to go through the differentiation, and we help coach them through that of they have a do nothing option. They can do nothing, right? And there's a cost, right? It's cost of lost opportunity and things like that. There's the DIY approach. And so they have to weigh the make solution versus a buy. They've got next best alternatives. And then they got what I call unknowns out there, which could be a disruptor or other that isn't currently in their purview or our purview that could come in and be a potential solution for them. And that's where blue ocean exists, if you refer back to the blue ocean strategy book.
Yep. And as I'm listening, it doesn't surprise me, but you have a theme in what you talk about, a consistency to it. And I'm imagining, when you talk about extreme ownership, teaching them to fish, accountability, those kinds of things.
Yep.
I would expect that you have a higher than normal second contract or, ongoing relationship with your client.
Yep.
And that when some of the employees from one client leave company A and go to company B, they don't understand why that company's not doing what the last one was doing.
Right.
And they call you and bring you along.
Yep.
Am I on the right page?
Yeah, no, exactly. And not only does it lead to additional clients, but it in many instances it leads to allies as well. And so uh, growing up in aerospace, in big companies, and you can you know this from automotive as well. Your customer can be your supplier,
Yeah.
can be your ally, can be your competitor in some instances, right? And so I mean your roles change depending upon this product segment, that market space, this company just merged with that company, all that kind of stuff. And so the intent is being a bit flexible with that and recognizing if you find good people with the right why that you can align behind the right purpose, and the puzzle pieces fit together, which means what do we deliver and what are our core strengths? What are the revenue game core strengths? What is company wise core strengths, and how we collectively fit together? That's where it truly brings the whole is greater than the sum of the parts together.
One of the rules I learned very early was when I met a really good person, I was going to do everything in my power not to lose them.
Exactly.
I don't care who they work for or what they do next. I
Yep.
want to talk to them every X number of weeks or months because
Exactly.
there'll be a time where we'll be an ally again or partners again or
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that's something that you and I have as one of our other commonalities is we're very much relationship first, and it's not transactional relationship where we're machine gun firing business cards out to people, but we're concerned more about long lasting, deep relationships with people, and the work will come second. The business elements will come second. But to your point, if you ally yourself with the right people, the business will come. And a quick story about that. So when I was managing people and managing managers and all this stuff. And we were bringing in new people, in particular, those with less experience, including new grads. A lot of hiring managers would look at the resume and look immediately at GPA, and then they throw out certain GPA ranges, and I do not do that. Now, there's a min number to it, right? But still, anything within that, even a 2.8 up to, I think they're greater than 4 or 5 today. I don't remember, but the point is that I'm looking at them holistically, and what they did in school is great as a foundational. I want them to learn to think critically and systemically and know the fundamentals, but we're going to teach them all the other stuff. What I really care about are their behaviors
Yeah.
and how they operate in a business environment. And so back to the Jocko things, what's their ownership? What's their accountability? Are they bold? Can they operate in an ambiguous environment, right? When that fog of war is all around them, what do? Do they panic, or do they use like an OODA loop approach, which is observe and orient and decide and act, right?
Yeah. I've been a Vistage member for 20 years. One of
Sure.
our most recent speakers, we've had some really interesting speakers lately, was the dean of the business school at Ohio State,
Mm-hmm.
which I was shocked he would come out and speak to our 12 people, but that was wonderful. And
Sure.
he said pretty much exactly what you did. He said one of the things and he's a pretty young guy. He said, it used to be, and they have the advanced leadership business school, whatever it's called. And he says, we used to just look at their test scores and their GPA. But
Yeah.
then we decided to combine the leaders from engineering, their masters, with the business school masters to create this next generation of deployment leaders kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he said, what we found was the straight A students with the high scores couldn't handle the stress.
Yeah.
You'd give them a hiccup and
Sure.
they'd fall apart.
Yeah.
The person with only a 3.5 and, only whatever the test score was, well, they just looked at it as a hiccup
Yeah.
and they just worked around it, solved it, and went on.
Yep.
So, I think even academia is starting to recognize that that's a valid way to approach it.
Certainly. And so, those that worked during college and had to juggle a workload versus a college load versus volunteer versus they were in extracurriculars and other things, that's real life, right?
Yeah.
When you're in the work world, that is more of a simulation, if you will, of what the real world is like. And working in teams, always poke at the working in teams, because nobody in industry works completely by themselves. There's always human interaction in some way, shape, or form. So relationships and how you operate as a team is incredibly important.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Josh, what else you got?
Let's see. One other, or actually, I have maybe two or three more if time permits. What does beyond horizon mean to you, and how should leaders think bigger without losing practical execution?
Great question. I love that question. And in fact, it plays into our as is and to be, right? So the where are you and where are you going? And we use a horizon model for the future state, and have them look at that first horizon one, which typically is in that 2 to 5 year time window, sometimes a little longer, but like their strategic plan window. And then the second horizon is past the strategic window. And then the horizon 3 is dream of the future. And the dream of the future could be the founder owner has sold their business and they're sitting in Fiji with a drink in the hand and toes in the sand. Or it could be we've grown and sold and now I'm doing this, or it's a myriad of things. It's dream of the possibility. So we help them think about that horizon 3, but then we go beyond, right? And we want them to think beyond the traditional strategic plan. So the purpose-built reason why we have that curvature of the earth is the vision is we want to go beyond that, right? So given the aerospace background and whatnot, we're interested in not just the beyond the earth, and we just recently had Artemis 2 go to the moon or circle the moon. We want to go past that. We're looking at solar system and we're looking into the universe as well. So we want them to truly look beyond the horizon as far out as they can go. And that's not to say that they're going to have all the gory details for that, but they know what that looks like, and it helps them to point their direction, if you will, because we're big proponents of begin with the end in mind, if you will. And that's the end, and it could be beyond the end of their time horizon, but their successor or their successors time horizon could be in that range. And then you start pulling it back in from there. So that beyond horizon connects to your 3 horizons. Your 3 horizons connect to the strategy. The strategy connects to your portfolio, and the portfolio connects to your projects, which connect to actions. And one of the things that our company does that many consulting companies don't do is you've got the dreamers and the visioneers that take you through to that strategy part. And then you've got the executors that focus on OpEx and process improvement and how do we execute better and more efficiently with that portfolio project and tactical elements. And we do it all. We bring it all together, which is the name of the company. In fact, it's Axom, stands for Alpha and Omega and everything in between.
Interesting. I've got one question, and then Josh, you give us the last one here in a minute. As I listened, Chad, to you have that conversation, the vision I got was when you come into a project, you're not just solving an engineering issue or
Mm-mm.
a process issue.
Nope.
You're having a firm impact in the culture and the way leaders work with their people. And my question for you is, how does OD or HR or whoever's in the company and thinks they're supposed to be doing that, how do they respond to you guys?
So we actually have, as a part of the alliance, and one of my core partners has developed a leadership operating system, if you will, which takes an entire people first model at scale and transforms, because you can have the best top line growth strategy plan with the best bottom line efficiency for margins and efficiency in SG&A, et cetera. But both of those plans sit on the shelf and collect dust
Yeah,
without the people. And
yeah,
people first is critical. The human element is critical for what we need to accomplish. And so the people transformation and the organizational elements that can enable that transformation starts at an individual level that can scale to team, to entity, to division, to enterprise, and even beyond the 4 walls of the company. We'll look into critical suppliers or strategic supply chain. We'll look at their core customer base, regulatory agencies, and others within their ecosystem. Think of key stakeholders and how all those pieces play together and ensure, to your point, the vision, mission, values are aligned. And I think you use the term true north.
yeah,
It's ensuring that the alignment of true north is there. It's not to say every one of those entities is going to be exactly aligned, because but you want personal and professional to be aligned, and we offer that as a part of our integrated solution packages.
Yeah, because it's interesting. Your work changes behavior. It
Yes,
changes language. It changes habits.
culture.
And when you change language and habits, the culture changes, period.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's infectious, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you've got a half of the group and they're bought in and they're actively, they've been completing the masterminds and all these other things. And then it's not only this theory, but it's also in practice. And so we purpose build the leadership elements into other parts of the transformation to ensure that they see how it works together in a real world environment,
Yeah.
but still giving them incremental uh, exercises, if you will,
Sure.
purpose-built exercises along the way, so they build their confidence with the ultimate end goal of light bulbs coming on.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Chad, last question. If a business owner listening to this episode is to only remember one thing from our conversation, what would you want them to remember? What's that one thing?
The one thing is no matter where they are in their journey, if they're seeing unbelievable complexity and they're drowning in their emails, they're drowning in their backlog challenges, supply chain challenges, customer challenges, no matter what, they should call Axom and we will help establish what those true challenges are, get to the root cause, and co-create integrated solutions with them.
Excellent. Do you have any advice for young people coming into the business world today?
Yeah, so for engineers, I say take business classes and understand the why behind some of the things that are going on in the engineering world. On the business side, I would say learn a little bit of the scientific method elements and maybe even take a couple introductory engineering classes, but look at the big picture and study psychology, because you're going to use psychology in every day within the business environment. Once again, it's the human element, and so people together are interactions, right? And so how do you deal with that, deal with other people is a critical element. And so think about business psychology and the art of negotiations,
Yeah.
and how you give someone their review when you get to that point, those kind of things. So
Yeah.
take that, but look for practical applications of it before you get on the job site.
It's amazing how little training we have in empathy, isn't
Yes.
it?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things, in fact, we have a talent pipeline program where there's gaps between the students or the in trade schools or other, and what they're teaching versus what the industries need. So there's an approach to close that gap in a quick fashion. So that's something that, Rick, you and I have talked a little bit about, but I'm sure we'll spend some more time on.
Well, thank you so much, Chad. This has been excellent. Josh, have you got final words for our audience today?
Well, thank you for joining us. And, Chad, thank you again for all of your stories and your wisdom and your knowledge you've shared with us today. I know I found it very entertaining and informative, so I'm sure everyone else did. So just thank you again, Chad.
Yeah, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity and inviting me to your podcast to share some stories with your audience.
Well, and for the audience, I'm sure you got as much out of it as Josh and I did. And you've got all of Chad's contact information there on the screen. I know he won't feel a bit bad if you reach out and want to
No,
have a
please do.
conversation with he or his team. And I can tell you they really are a well organized, people focused team. So that's worth it. And if you're looking for anything around revenue science, uh, chief revenue officer certification, team building, launching new products, reach out to Josh and I, and we'll be glad to give you a hand. For everybody, thanks for being here. And 2 weeks, we'll have another one. Thank you.